Ooh, this looks fun. So I waited for the perfect time. I'm going to pull the starter back out of this thing. You might have watched me put a starter in it, and what's happening is the end of the bendix is, say that's the ring gear, the end of the bendix is slamming into the side of the ring gear, basically in too far in order to mesh the teeth. Now why the heck it's doing that, why a working starter would slowly get worse and worse about doing that, and why a brand new starter would do that, anyways, I shimmed it out with just what I had on hand, and I managed to get it to start, but you could hear it grinding on the snout of the starter motor itself, because I shimmed it, was now hitting the ring gear. Anyways, I'm going to see if I can shim it properly. This is a 97, 98 Ford Explorer V6. Books don't show any shims. It's not supposed to have any shims, but nonetheless, here we are. So I'll see if I can get that out, get that shimmed properly, because I need to go to the river house. So here's the starter out. You see right there? That's where the ring gear teeth saw on the snout of the thing. So the ring gear runs right in here. It's as if the end of the starter is too close to the engine, but you can see it's got a captive groove around there. What in the world would cause it to do that? And what in the world would cause it to do it to a perfectly fine, I now know, and functional old starter where it slowly got worse and worse and worse, but in the grand scheme of things fairly quickly. Crankshaft journal bearings? I mean, the ring gear is bolted to the end of the crankshaft. So what could possibly cause these two, because it was doing this to the old starter as well. It was beginning to saw in, not as pronounced as right here. Might have to go tinker around a little bit. I can't imagine that you could end up with crank bearings that bad and not have other fairly catastrophic motor problems. It has pretty catastrophic transmission problems, but I don't think that they're related. I'll check. Maybe this mounts to the transmission bell housing flange and not the back of the motor. And if that's the case, maybe loose bell housing bolts allowing the two to separate. Now that might be a winner. Let me go double check that. That might be a winner right there. It does bolt to the transmission bell housing, obviously, I suppose, but there is no indication anything's coming loose, and none of the bolts I can easily get to are loose. You know, I could pivot the bottom out, which would lift the snout off the ring gear. There's still no explanation as to why it would have slowly gotten worse on the old starter, and the amount I've got to lift it when looking at the nose of the new starter, how deep the ring gear is cut into it, seems substantial. So I'm going to stop right there. You know, when I was looking for a misalignment and couldn't find one, like for instance a loose transmission bell housing, that was the key. These things aren't designed to have simmed starters, and any attempt I made to modify or slot the holes or give that starter a little bit of clearance had no effect, and the reason is it's broken off the crank. The flex plate has broken off the crank. The reason it looked nice and firm, the reason it didn't flex, is because it's still firmly attached to the transmission, but it's broken free from the crank. So unfortunately, if you've got one of these and you're eating the nose and you can't seem to fix it with a new starter and everything looks fine, it's entirely possible you've had your flex plate break off the crank bolts. For me, this is probably fatal for this thing. I'm not going to take the time to fix it, at least not right now, not anytime soon. I do have a spare one out at the farm, and I go back and forth, and then for the moment it's just super frustration. Go back and forth because in that one, in theory, I've got a motor that uses a little bit of oil, but a decent transmission and flex plate. But the two of them have the same mileage on them, so what's to say that flex plate isn't bad? So I'd have to put it. I'm just done with it. But for anybody out there watching this with a similar problem, it could be that you have a center hub of your flex plate that is broken free, and no starter in the world is ever going to fix that.